Welcome to LinesToGo installation videos. Today we will be replacing brake lines on a 2008 Toyota Tacoma using LinesToGo part number BLT-112-SS. While this particular installation is being performed on a 2008 Toyota Tacoma, this set of lines will also fit the following year, make, and models as shown on your screen now. LinesToGo lines are made using original equipment end forms and fittings that are CNC bent for an easy and precise installation. We have also upgraded to stainless steel braided Teflon hoses for rust protection and to prevent surface fouling. These have an unlimited shelf life and anti-static PTFE liner. This set of LinesToGo lines are made using 304L stainless steel for rust resistance that exceeds OEM standards. Tech tip: disconnect the battery before working on a vehicle to reduce the risk of shorting out the battery on tools or lines. LinesToGo lines are made with a sectional design for easier installation. We also use color-coded unions on our sectioned lines. Just match the colors at the connections. Make sure to depressurize the fuel system before starting the installation. Tools required: 10mm, 12mm, 14mm, and 19mm sockets and ratchet, 10mm, 12mm, and 13mm wrenches, pliers and cutting pliers, flat blade screwdriver, drain pan, jack and jack stands. The level of difficulty for this installation is considered to be medium. To depressurize the fuel system, locate the fuel pump fuse using your owner's manual and remove it. Start the vehicle and wait for the engine to stall. Make sure to replace the fuse once completed. Start by disconnecting the negative battery terminal using a 10mm wrench. Next, use a 10mm and a 12mm wrench to remove the 6-threaded fittings from the ABS module. Note, the intake air filter housing is shown removed here, however it is not required to complete the installation. Use a 12mm wrench to remove the 2-threaded fittings from the master cylinder. Disconnect the engine wiring harness from the metal support by lifting up on the locking clip. This will allow more room for running the lines in and out of the vehicle. Use a pair of pliers or a flat blade screwdriver to remove the brake lines from the plastic clips along the firewall. Locate the line that goes from the ABS module to the left front wheel well and cut the line beside the master cylinder using a pair of cutting pliers. Remove the 2 1/4-inch master cylinder lines along with the left front line that was cut. Raise and support the vehicle and use a 19mm socket to remove all 4 wheels. Remove the rubber splash guard from both front inner wheel wells. Use a 10mm wrench to remove the top threaded fitting inside of the right front wheel well and remove the first section of the right front brake line from the vehicle. Use a 10mm wrench to remove both threaded fittings from the next section of the right front brake line and remove it from the vehicle. Again, use a 10mm wrench to remove the 2 threaded fittings from the final section of the right front brake line. Repeat these steps inside of the left front wheel well to remove the remaining left front brake lines from the vehicle. Use a pair of cutting pliers to cut both rear feed lines beside the master cylinder. Remove the 2 remaining lines at the ABS module. Underneath the vehicle on the driver's side, use a 10mm wrench to remove the two threaded fittings that secure the forward lines. Remove the fuel lines and brake lines from the plastic clips. Removing the fuel lines from the clips will allow more room to remove and install the brake lines. Remove the forward section of the rear brake lines from underneath the vehicle. Next, we will need to remove the fuel tank. Start by removing the plastic cover from the fuel line connections at the front of the tank. Disconnect the two quick connect fittings by depressing the two tabs to remove them. Have a drain pan ready as some fuel will be left in the lines. Inside of the left rear wheel well, use a 12mm socket to remove the bolt that secures the bracket holding the filler neck lines. This bolt is missing here, but we will replace it during the installation. Next, use a 10mm socket to remove the other bolt on the bracket that secures the clamp to the largest tube. Remove the two other lines from the plastic clip and remove the bracket from the vehicle. Loosen the clamp on the large line using a flat blade screwdriver or an 8mm socket. Remove the quick connect fitting from the smallest line by depressing the two tabs to disconnect it. Next, place a support underneath the fuel tank and use a 14mm socket to remove the two bolts that secure the fuel tank straps. Underneath the vehicle on the other side of the fuel tank, remove the spring clips and pins that secure the two fuel tank straps and remove the straps from the vehicle. Carefully start to lower the fuel tank. There is still a hose connection at the rear of the tank and an electrical connector at the sending unit. You will need to lower the tank a few inches to be able to access them. Once you have enough room to reach on top of the fuel tank, lift up on the plastic cover over the sending unit. The cover just snaps into place. Disconnect the sending unit electrical connector. At the rear of the fuel tank, disconnect the evap tube by depressing the two tabs. Continue to lower the fuel tank and remove it from underneath the vehicle. Remove the two remaining threaded fittings from the frame-mounted union using a 10mm wrench. Use a 10mm wrench to remove the two threaded fittings at the top of the rear flex hoses. If your fittings are overly rusted, you can cut the lines and remove the fittings using locking pliers. Remove the rear brake lines from the plastic clips along the frame. Use a pair of cutting pliers to cut both rear brake lines where the front of the fuel tank was located. Remove the two forward sections of lines from the vehicle. Remove the fuel vent line from the plastic clips along the frame. This will allow more room to route the lines over the rear cross member. Use a pair of cutting pliers to cut both lines between the two rear cross members. Remove the remaining sections of the rear feed lines from the vehicle. At the rear axle, use a 12mm socket to remove the 4 bolts that secure the rear axle lines to the axle and remove the clips from the lines. Use a 10mm wrench to remove the 4 threaded fittings from the wheel cylinders and the bottom of the rear flex hoses. Remove both rear axle lines from the vehicle. To begin the installation of your new stainless steel LinesToGo brake lines, start by installing the right rear axle line labeled 06F into position and start the threaded fittings into the right rear wheel cylinder and the bottom of the right rear flex hose. Tighten both fittings using a 10mm wrench. Next, install the left rear axle line labeled 05F into position and start the threaded fittings into the left rear wheel cylinder and the left rear flex hose. Tighten both threaded fittings using a 10mm wrench. Replace the brackets that secured the original lines and secure them using a 12mm socket. Next, underneath the vehicle, install the line labeled 06C into position and start the front threaded fitting into the top port in the frame-mounted union. Next, install the line labeled 05C into position and start the front threaded fitting into the bottom port in the frame-mounted union. Install the line labeled 06D into position and start the front threaded fitting into the LinesToGo color-coded union, connecting it to line 06C. Next, install the line labeled 05D into position and start the front threaded fitting into the LinesToGo color-coded union, connecting it to line 05C. Install the line labeled 06E into position, routing it over the cross member, and start the front threaded fitting into the color-coded union, connecting it to line 06D. Finally, install line 05E into position, routing it over the cross member, and start the front threaded fitting into the color-coded union, connecting it to line 05D. Start the 2 rear threaded fittings into the top of the rear flex hoses. The line labeled 05E goes to the hose on the left, and the line labeled 06E goes to the hose on the right. You will need to bend the end of the 06E line using a pair of pliers. The line was bent this way to allow for easier installation over the cross member. Tighten the fittings at the rear flex hoses and at the frame-mounted union using a 10mm wrench. Tighten the 4 LinesToGo color-coded unions using a 12mm and a 13mm wrench. Secure the lines into the plastic clips along the frame. Next, at the front of the vehicle, we will be installing the secondary brake line labeled 02 into position. Start the fittings into the forward horizontal port in the ABS module and the front port in the master cylinder. Tighten both fittings using a 13mm wrench. Next, install the primary brake line labeled 01 into position and start the threaded fittings into the rear horizontal port in the ABS module and the rear port in the master cylinder. Tighten both fittings using a 13mm wrench. Secure the two master cylinder lines into the plastic clips along the firewall. Next, install the first section of the left front brake line, labeled 03A, into position. Start the threaded fitting at the ABS module into the rearmost top port. Next, install the line labeled 03B into position, routing it between the fuel lines and the inner fender. Start the bottom threaded fitting into the top port in the frame-mounted union. Connect the two lines by the master cylinder using the LinesToGo color-coded union. Tighten the fittings at the ABS module and the frame-mounted union using a 10mm wrench. Tighten the fittings at the LinesToGo union using a 12mm and a 13mm wrench. Install the next section of the left front brake line, labeled 03C, into position. Start both threaded fittings by hand. Tighten both fittings using a 10mm wrench. Next, install the final section of the left front brake line, labeled 03D, into position and start both fittings by hand. Tighten both fittings using a 10mm wrench. Install the first section of the right front LinesToGo brake line, labeled 04A, into position. Start the top threaded fitting into the top of the ABS module at the rear central port. Start the bottom threaded fitting into the top port on the frame-mounted union. Tighten both fittings using a 10mm wrench. Install the next section of the right front LinesToGo brake line, labeled 04B, into position and start the threaded fittings by hand. Tighten both fittings using a 10mm wrench. Install the final section of the right front LinesToGo brake line, labeled 04C, into position and start the threaded fittings by hand. Tighten both fittings using a 10mm wrench. Next, install the front section of the left rear brake line, labeled 05A, into position. Start the threaded fitting into the forward central port in the ABS module. Next, install the front section of the right rear LinesToGo brake line, labeled 06A, into position. Start the threaded fitting into the top forward port in the ABS module. Underneath the vehicle, install the line labeled 05B into position. Start the rear threaded fitting into the lower port on the frame-mounted union. Next, install the LinesToGo brake line labeled 06B into position. Start the threaded fitting into the top port on the frame-mounted union. Connect the remaining lines using the LinesToGo unions located beside the master cylinder, taking note of the color-coded connections. Tighten the fittings in the ABS module and the frame-mounted union using a 10mm wrench. Tighten the two remaining unions using a 12mm and a 13mm wrench. Secure any remaining lines into the plastic mounting clips. Secure the wiring harness at the passenger side firewall. Bleed all four wheels using a 10mm wrench at the rear and an 8mm wrench at the front, making sure to keep the master cylinder reservoir topped up with fluid. Once the brakes are bled, hold pressure on the brake pedal for a few seconds to make sure there are no leaks present. Next, we will replace the fuel tank. Raise the fuel tank into place, leaving enough room to connect the wiring harness and the tube at the rear of the tank. Connect the sending unit electrical connector and replace the plastic sending unit cover. Connect the evap tube at the rear of the fuel tank. Continue to raise the tank into position while feeding the filler tube over the frame. Replace the 2 fuel tank straps by replacing the pins and securing them with the spring clips. Secure the 2 fuel tank straps using a 14mm socket and remove the support. Tighten the clamp on the filler tube using an 8mm socket or a flat blade screwdriver. Connect the small line at the quick connect fitting. Next, replace the bracket and secure it into place using a 12mm socket. Install the locking bracket and secure it using a 10mm socket. Connect the 2 fuel line quick connect fittings at the front of the tank and replace the plastic cover. Replace both front splash guards inside of the front wheel wells. Replace all 4 wheels and torque to your manufacturer's recommended specification using a 19mm socket. Replace the negative battery terminal and secure it using a 10mm wrench. This concludes the installation of stainless steel brake lines on a 2008 Toyota Tacoma using LinesToGo part number BLT-112-SS. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions or would like to purchase the lines you saw today, please call us at 1-855-781-5992, email us at info@linestogo.com, or check out our website link below. Don't forget to take advantage of our free next day shipping. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button below, and we will see you in our next video.